listeners. Welcome to episode 214 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is April 23rd, 2025, and my guest is Rachel in Kansas. No announcements this week since I bombarded you last week, so we'll go right into the conversation with Rachel. Hello, listeners. Welcome back. I have Rachel with us today, and Rachel is very busy. So I appreciate you working me into your busy day.
Yeah.
And where are you located?
So I am in South Central Kansas in a relatively small town called Hutchinson. We are about, let's see, I wrote this down, 39 miles from Wichita. Yeah, just a small farming community, Central Kansas. It's kind of a flyover state, but kind of like that because I like the wide open spaces and the lack of congested areas. So yeah.
Yeah, I've been watching the Smithsonian Channel Aerial America. I
Okay.
don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's all filmed from the air.
Oh, wow.
So I just watched the one on Kansas.
Oh, really?
It was like grain elevators and feedlots
Yep.
and farming, and well, it's whatever
Oh,
they
yeah.
can film from the air. So
Yeah.
it's going to be that kind of stuff
Yeah.
in Western states. But let's see, Amelia Earhart is from there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and
There's
they
a
have like
lot
this.
of, airplanes and Wichita has airplane factories built.
Right, manufacturing.
Yep.
Right. I think
Yep.
they showed a Boeing factory.
Yep.
Anyway,
Exactly. Yep.
it's an interesting series because it's all from the air.
Well, every area, one of the things that our small town is known for is we have an underground salt museum here.
Oh,
And so there are internationally, like it's internationally known because they house some original camera negatives from like movies like Gone with the Wind and Ben-Hur.
uh-huh.
And it's a museum, you can go tour it. I personally have never done it because it doesn't really appeal to me to go 650 feet under the earth.
Yeah,
But
that
it
can be
is
a
a
little
pretty,
nerve-wracking.
yeah, but it is something that we do have going for us here. So very interesting. But
Aren't
yeah.
there some random salt formations?
Um, like above grounds.
Yeah, or maybe I'm getting it
Um,
confused with a different
well,
state.
there are salt flats, but I don't think that's here.
Okay, yeah, there
Yeah.
are several Midwestern states in a row, so
Yeah.
probably a
Yeah,
blur.
ours is
Anyway,
all underground. So there's definitely salt here, but it's under the
okay.
surface.
Now, is this where you're originally from, or did you move there?
No, no. So my husband and children and I moved here in 2014.
Okay.
I do have family here. My parents and some of my siblings are here, and they moved here in uh, 99. So
Mhm.
my husband and I had lived together in Pennsylvania for 13 years with our family, and then we moved here to be closer to my family in 2014. And
Okay.
yeah, we've been here since then. So 11 years. So yeah,
Okay. Wow, that's a long time.
yeah,
Okay, well, we got all that out of the way.
yeah,
I
history.
always like to say where the guests are from because you might be contacted by other people in your area that are
Sure.
sellers, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's an isolating business, so it's
Yeah.
good to have eBay friends that you can meet up with sometimes and share
Yeah.
information and support each other. So
Sure.
you probably will hear from some people that, oh,
Oh,
I'm
maybe.
there, because that
Yeah.
happens every time.
Yeah. Well, you recently had somebody on, I think, from the Wichita area, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to look for her when I'm out and about at estate sales and stuff. I can't
Yeah.
remember her
Okay.
name, but yeah. So
Okay. Good. All right. Well, and then the next question is, when did you get into eBay and how did that happen?
sure. Well, I looked back on my, how long have I had my account? And I've had my account since 2014, but that was kind of in the time when I used the account then, it was more or less just like buying or, getting rid of some things when my children were smaller. If I needed things, I would, look to eBay or whatever. So I
Mhm.
wasn't really like using it a lot at that point, but um in 2017 for about just under 2 years, I had worked for an estate sale company locally here. And during
Mm-hmm.
that time, I was exposed to a lot of people that were resellers. And then my friend Rosanna, actually, you had her on the podcast, I think in
Yes.
maybe
Okay.
2022 or something like that. Yeah, she and I were and still are regularly in, contact. And she was telling me about her eBay business. And she's like, "Oh, Rachel, I just think you'd be so good at it. You have such an interesting eye." And she kind of planted those seeds in my mind that, well, maybe this is something I should think about. And then in 2019, I was in another job that I wasn't super fulfilled with. And by this point, all my children were in school. So I felt more like I had an opportunity that I could, pursue making income to help with raising a family and such. And I thought, well, maybe I should try this. And so I kind of just dipped my toe in and, sold a few things here and there. Well, the thing that really kind of like sparked it for me in 2019 was I was at a local thrift store, like a ministry type of thrift store, and I found a pair of Gucci men's shoes. And I thought, this is crazy. They were $7. And I looked at them and I was like, well, for $7, I'm going to take the risk and take these home and see. I was a little nervous because I didn't want something that was fake, to get me kicked off of eBay or something like that. But I brought them home and researched as much as I could. And I was like, well, I'm gonna list them. I listed them fairly high for like 275. And I thought, well, we'll see what happens. And immediately, I'm getting watchers. And then I started getting lowball offers. And I was like, yeah, I don't really have to sell these for, I kind of wanted $200 because I wanted $200 to do something specific with. And I thought, well, if I can get $200, I'm going to do it. And once I got an offer within like less than a week for $200. And I was like, I'm taking it. Well, I sent them off and, they got them and everything. And I didn't hear anything. So I thought, well, all, no news is good news. So that was kind of the spark that really got me going into eBay. And what a good time to get into it right before 2020. We were all then stuck at home. So I felt like
Right.
I really got into it at a really good time.
Right. Now, how old are your kids?
Sure. My oldest is 21. I have an 18-year-old, a son that'll be 16 tomorrow, actually, and my youngest
Oh,
is 12. So yeah.
okay. You
Yeah.
got busy, busy. Are they all at home?
Yes. My 18-year-old daughter is currently gone at a Bible school for like 3 months, but yes, they're all still at home. So yes, a very busy season, very busy lifestyle.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, you post on the group a lot
Mhm.
about your sales, so that's why
Yes.
I picked on you
Yeah.
because I was like, I need to get her on here. Although
Yeah.
your name is you and your husband's
I
name.
know, right? Yeah.
So I
So
was like, are they both doing this or is it just how the account is set up? But
yeah. Yeah,
so
we just share the account. So
does he help with the eBay part?
You know, so he has a full-time job outside the home, but he is very supportive and very enthusiastic. And like he's like today, I said something to him about, well, I'm hoping to go to a couple sales this afternoon. He's like jokingly, oh, I'll just skip out and I'll go with you. So yes, he helps me as he can, but it is not something that I necessarily count on. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Okay, good. Um, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
yeah, yeah. And he's always down for like if I want to like last fall we actually went on in lots of different areas there's like these 100-mile yard sales. And so we did a weekend trip, did a 100-mile yard sale in southern Kansas and Oklahoma, and that was just a good time. He's very supportive of me doing this. So, yeah,
Okay, good. Well, you are prepared with notes, so
I
we are going
am.
to jump into talking about some things that you sold and the stories behind those items.
Yeah. Well, I thought about, where do I start and where do I stop? But like I said, when I got into this, like right, you know, end of 2019 into 2020, um, that was just like it's. I can look back at that and think, oh man, those were the good old days because it has changed a lot for me. That was just such a good time for reselling because we were at home and there was different opportunities, at least from my area and from my perspective. And one of the things that this is probably just one of my favorite stories about things that I've sold is early in the spring of 2020, we'd all been like forced into homeschooling our kids, schools shut down and all that. And my kids go to a private Christian school but we were still affected. We had to, finish up the year at home, and it was very stressful and not something I was interested in doing, homeschooling. But
Mhm.
so in the spring of 2020, like I think it was like in June, I was on Facebook Marketplace and I saw this listing for it was a local church that had bought a public school that had closed a few years ago. They had bought the facility and all of the contents. And with that came all of the curriculum that was with the public school. And one of my friends here in the area that had is part of that church had bought the building. She had advertised all the curriculum, and it was a picture of like, this big shop room with just boxes and stacks of curriculum. And she wanted $50 for all of it. You had to take everything. And I thought, oh my, now that feels like an opportunity because I'm not the only one forced into homeschooling. And, my kids we have to figure out what we're going to do. And people were, reassessing what they were going to do with their children. So we went over and looked at it. My husband and the kids and I, we took our truck and we took my SUV and we loaded up the back of our pickup truck with books and the back of my SUV. It was an actual truckload of books we got for $50, and we brought it home. And we have a small property with, outbuildings and stuff. So I had space to put it on
Mhm.
some shelves out in the shop and went through it and little by little started, photographing and listing. I made thousands of dollars from that $50 investment because everyone was we were all in a crisis together and we all had to figure out next steps. And it was just a great opportunity because people were in need. And I saw it as something like, I can fill this need. It was just really fascinating. And I mean, I was shipping out books every day. It was just incredible. People were just, they needed books. And I literally, I mean, like I said, made thousands of dollars, but up until just, I think it was the end of last year, first part of January this year, I told my husband, okay, we've sold all the good books and I'm sick of these things. Some of them were really obsolete and I knew I wasn't going to sell them. So I was like, let's get them out of here. But I was looking back on some of my sales, like even in the last year, I had sold a lot of 7 literature books. Now, some of these books weren't like, you know, $20 books or anything, but even if they were $10 books, I when I first started selling them, like I sold 3 books and I paid for the whole truckload. And there was
Right.
hundreds of books. I just kept selling them. Well, last year I sold 7 books and they went to somewhere I was never aware of. It's called Saipan Mariana Islands. I didn't even know
Okay.
there was
Yeah.
such a place. But
Okay.
anyways, somebody bought 70 of these books. They must have had a small school. So it was just really fascinating too, because they went all over the country. I'm not sure that there was a state I had not sent books to. So that's just probably one of my favorite, you know, eBay stories of things that I sold that was super interesting and just a good time.
Were they textbooks or just
Yes, yes.
random? Oh, they were
They were
textbooks.
textbooks, sorry, yeah, they were textbooks as well as, like, teachers' manuals,
Hmm.
just all kinds of resources for, I mean, all the different subjects. But, yeah, they were textbooks. So,
That is
workbooks, all that kind of
great.
stuff. Yeah,
Great story. Yeah, you never know when you can do these bulk buys
right,
if how long it's going to take to sell
right.
everything and how that's going to go. But when the price is that low per
Oh,
item,
I know.
I mean, you were into that for pennies per item, probably.
Exactly, exactly, and it was just a little pipeline of continual sales, for years, honestly. I would say the majority of them I sold in the first year and a half because
Hmm.
that was kind of when the, need was the greatest. But like I said, even up until the end of last year, I was still randomly getting sales on those books. So that was a good time.
And you're kind of like, all right, I'm ready for this to be over. I'm ready for these
Yes.
books to be gone.
Yes.
These have been sitting here for 3-4 years.
Yes.
You know, everything eventually sells, but
Yeah.
there's I call it the irritation factor of like,
Yes.
yeah, I'm really sick of looking at
Yeah.
this.
And that's where I got to with those books. I was like, they're out in the shop. They're kind of not hurting anything, but I'm just done. They just need to go.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I didn't
Okay.
feel too bad to get rid of the ones that were still left.
But that's a successful story.
Yeah.
So good for you.
Very
And
random.
yeah, COVID time was weird.
Yeah.
Um, so you got into it in 2019. And I will say that the summer of 2020, when everything opened
Mhm.
back up and people wanted to be outside, and
Yeah.
um, I sold so much athletic wear. It just,
Yeah.
I had it, and
Yeah.
the stores, they didn't have
Right.
things, or you
Right.
could try it on,
Right.
or people buying online anyway, or stores weren't open, or all those factors. And
Yep.
I just thought that was a great time for
Mhm.
some eBay sellers, depending on what
Mhm.
you had,
Right.
because we have all this inventory in our homes,
Yes.
and it's not a supply chain issue.
Mhm.
We
Right.
have it. And
Right. We didn't
that's
have.
still valid today
Yeah.
when you can't find something. You
Mhm.
know, eBay sellers have these items on hand in their home. And I love it when, you know, I go to Amazon and it's currently out of stock.
Mhm.
That is a, you know, a win, because
Mhm.
if it's not available and I have it,
Yeah.
then sometimes you can command the price, or it sells faster.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was just a really strange time,
It was.
depending on what you had. But
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, that was a good buy for you. So
Yeah, and another thing, like I had over 2020 and 2021, I got into selling some things for a couple of friends. One in particular, um, she had, it's funny, like in my world, buying used, looking for bargains, that's something I'm very familiar with. It's just kind of a lifestyle. But there's people out there that is just foreign to them. Like she had all these very nice things, like a lot of clothes and shoes and purses. And she has extremely good taste. It's not like she's got a champagne taste on a beer budget. She's got a champagne taste with a pocketbook to, support that. And so she and I connected through, we were in a running group together, and somehow through that, um I ended up taking things from her and selling them, and then we would split the profit. Well, that was just another, like, I mean, it was just free money for me because I didn't have to go source. And during COVID there were times when that was a little bit of a, am I going to go today, or are the thrift stores even open? But I was getting just tons of stuff from her, and we were both doing very well, and selling things like Lululemon, and like you said, like athletic things that people were, really into working out. So they were buying all that stuff like crazy too. So that was a really good experience as well, which I mean, we both were very happy with how that turned out. But the funny thing was, like, when I would give her a check, and I'd write down all the things that had sold, she just couldn't believe it, because to her, why would people buy used shoes? Well, I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, they will definitely do that. So you just never know.
yeah, it is interesting to talk with people who are not resellers, and they
Yeah,
just don't understand the market, and or they would first of all never set foot in a thrift
right,
store, because
right,
everything in there is used and, you know, germy, and you
right.
know they can't get past that.
I
Although you
know.
go in a regular retail store at the mall, that stuff is germy too.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
or they just can't, you know, just because they wouldn't buy
Hmm.
a used item for whatever, shoes, clothes, toys, they can't fathom why other people
I
would.
know.
And
I know.
so it's just, you got to get out of your own head. Just
Yes.
because you wouldn't do something
Hmm.
doesn't mean nobody would.
I know. Yeah,
And
it
I
is
think that's
definitely a mindset.
where the resellers, if you get that,
Yeah.
if you just go into it with an open mind and try to
Mhm.
understand your customer and why they're buying it,
Mhm.
the world is your oyster. You can sell anything.
Yeah, exactly. It is definitely a mindset. And I would have grown up with a mindset of, well, when you're raising a family or you're in a family, you got to do what you got to do. And I was always brought up with, second hand me downs, that sort of thing. So I love it.
Do you have siblings?
I do. So I'm the oldest of 5 kids. So yeah.
So you got hand-me-downs from another family.
Well, if I got any, yes. I probably didn't get as many hand-me-downs as my siblings, though, being the oldest.
Right.
So
Yeah. Because I'm the second of four and I had an older sister, had an older
sure.
sister. And so I got all her stuff. And
Yeah.
my young sister, who's 4 years younger,
Hmm.
by then the hand-me-downs were yucko. And so she got all
Hmm.
new stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
like, the middle child syndrome, I
Right.
always get the used ones. But that's just the way it is in a
Yeah.
family with a bunch of kids.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, what else do you have on your list?
Sure. So I kind of wrote down some things that I have. So when I go out looking for things to buy, I'm pretty drawn to a variety of things, but yeah, some things that I like to sell. I actually took a bunch of pictures of sold comps or sold, things on my eBay. Um, this was an interesting thing. I've actually sold something like this a couple of times. I had picked up some vintage, like department store wrapping paper, like
Mhm.
big rolls, like really pretty. But, I picked the first time I picked one up, I paid $1 for it. It was a huge roll and I sold it for like $130.
Oh,
But
wow.
then I had picked up another roll at an estate sale. Um, last summer, I think. It was $6. It was really cute. It was like a floral, um, you know, blue, green, orange, yellow, all those colors. And again, I sold it for like $127.
Oh, yeah.
So that's just fascinating. Now, it was kind of heavy, but it worked out okay. It wasn't too bad to ship that, but that was kind of interesting. And that's
Was
something
it
that I
a
love finding.
was it a specific brand or style?
No, so there were no brands on it. That was the other thing was really interesting, but you can tell, it's definitely vintage and people want that kind of stuff. I have no idea, what I don't know. I guess they're just using it for themselves or I don't know what they're doing with it rather, but that's really interesting. Another thing that I'm not afraid to sell is periodicals. So I like magazines. I don't currently have any magazine subscriptions because I think they're kind of pricey to buy new and I can get them at my library, but I'll pick them
Yes.
up, at sales. And recently I picked up I think it was like 3 boxes of, actually, I have some of them here. So they're these gardening magazines.
Huh?
I love gardening, so it's something that, I'm going to look out for gardening stuff. And this person was a master gardener, so they had a lot of periodicals, like of older vintage gardening magazines. And I got the whole lot for like $10. Well, I'm not going to look at all of them, but I've looked at quite a few of them. Well, I lotted them up by year. So there's like, here was actually, it was a couple years in a lot. I had sold 23 of them. And I wrote on the listing, what the magazine was and what the periodicals or what the dates were, rather, like 2015 to 2018. And that sold for like, $28. And I think I have like 6 more listings of those for, 30 to 20 some dollars. Well, that's good money too. And they're easy to ship, because they're media mail. So that's easy to do. So that's kind of fun. And I've sold several of those lots already. So I easily made my money back. Actually, I made my money back on the first sale of those, and I've sold 3 or 4 of them, and I have quite a few left. So, and I've sold some, like, people probably know this, but like Magnolia Home, I think is what it's called, or
Uh-huh.
Joanna Gaines's magazine. I've sold those, only come out maybe 4 or 6 times a year, and those are expensive magazines, but I've, saved some when I've picked them up to make, a full year's worth of those magazines, and people will pay that for them because they wanna collect them. So that's interesting, in my opinion. I think that's kind of fun to sell that.
Well, I think that is a product that might be overlooked a
Yeah.
lot when resellers are out sourcing. Obviously you're going to see them at your library
Mhm.
sales, but the more obscure it is, the better.
Yeah. Sure.
And you don't have to have all the issues. You can just
No.
do it one at a time. I sold some magazines back a long time ago, and it was something about building boats, like
Okay.
build your own canoe, and
Yeah.
it was like a woodworking, but for boats.
Yeah.
And those sold for good money.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
not everybody wants the information electronic. They
Right. Exactly.
actual magazine you can carry around with you, and
Mhm.
just the whole experience of holding it like a book.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
I
just because we've gone to so much digital information doesn't mean magazines are not wanted anymore.
Right. Right. I like that too. I like looking at magazines. I like holding, objects in my hand instead of looking on a screen. I get so tired of looking at screens.
Yeah,
Just
me
I
too.
just don't enjoy it after a while. I want to just hold a piece of paper in
I
my hand.
think there's something about the connection of what you're holding in your hand and it goes into your brain.
Mhm.
It's like doing math with a pencil rather than like on a calculator or whatever.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
something about the hand brain connection.
Yeah.
And the photography can be so beautiful. It's just a totally different experience than looking at it
Yes.
on a screen.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Another thing that I really like to pick up, and I love finding, like when I look at estate sales, I often will look for, do they have quilts? I love selling quilts. I love picking up old quilts. And I've done quite a bit of that over the years. Like I have quite a few listed in my store currently too. But um, recently, so I actually work part-time in a furniture store where we sell handcrafted Amish furniture. And I work
Oh,
with
nice.
an Amish man, and I talk about my eBay business, and he had made some comment about they're getting ready for a farm sale actually this weekend, and he said, they were also having a garage sale last fall, and he said that they had picked out all this stuff, and I asked him, I was like, "What about, do you guys have any quilts?" "Oh yeah, but nobody wants those." I was like, "Well," I said, "Well, um, I'd be interested in them." And he's like, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I would be." I said, I'd like to look at them, and if we can come to a price that we both feel happy with, I'd be interested to buy them. So the next time I worked with him, then he brought him into the store, and he had three um, quilts, which to me it's a little sad that nobody in his family wants them, but they were like
Right.
his mom, and they were old antique handmade and hand stitched quilts. I mean, this is none of this like machine quilted stuff going on here. And they were beautiful. So, I felt like I wanted to be respectful of, like, I wanted to give him a fair price, but I also wanted to get a good deal. But I also have had enough experience selling them, and that I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I think I know what I can get. And so this is like, I told him this is the top of what I'm willing to pay for these. He had three of them there. I said, "How would you feel about $40 a quilt?" He thought that was great. And so we were both really happy with that. I brought him home, got him listed, and I've sold all three of those. And the most I got was like 175. The other
Okay.
two I sold for 150 and 130. Now, maybe I could have held out for more, but I'm also not storing them forever, and someone else is enjoying them. So I
Right.
do I do love selling quilts. I just think it's a dying art. People aren't, doing that as much anymore, but they're just so beautiful, and I love when I can find, good hand stitched quilts that people will pay good money for, and they do. Like, yeah, it's really fun. And I've had a lot of repeat buyers with that too, because apparently they're, following my store or whatever. So that's been fun.
Now, can you speak to how to tell if it's hand stitched? I think this was on the group the other day,
Yeah.
but since you're in that world, can you
Yeah.
give us some tips on that?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell, like, I couldn't see very well in those pictures, but I thought just from what I could see that those looked hand stitched. The machine quilted will just be continuous stitching. Hand quilted, there's like a gap in the stitches. So like, yeah, that's the main thing I would say. Well, most quilts would be machine pieced, wherein they've like stitched the pieces together with a
Mm-hmm.
machine. Then they, would press them out and, assemble, the pattern together, sew it all together. And then they put a batting or whatever in between the back and the top being the quilt part. And then they would put like a binding around the edges, but then they would quilt on the top of it. And that I mean, from my perspective, you can pretty easily tell because the machine stitching is just a continuous stitch. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
You just have to look really closely at the
Yes.
stitches, and they're, if it's a good quilter,
Mhm.
they're going to be pretty uniform,
Yes.
but you can still tell there's some gaps, like you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a market for that.
Yeah,
Um,
I've got my eye out for a cathedral window quilt.
oh, I have one of those that my great grandmother made, and I'm
Oh,
not gonna part
really?
with that. It's a
I mean, you can
beautiful.
get like
Oh, I
$1,000 for some
know.
of
I
those because
know.
it is such detailed, intense
Yes.
work. It is very, very time intensive to make that particular one. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's a beautiful piece of art. That's for
yeah,
sure. Um, Another thing that I guess you want me to just keep going here.
yeah, absolutely.
So, like I mentioned, my husband and I had gone to 100 mile yard sale last summer, and it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and we had gone down Thursday morning and hit sales along the way, and a lot of the sales were just you just never know what you're going to find. And this was my first time doing this, so my expectations were pretty neutral. I was like, well, anything we find is great because I don't know what to expect.
Hmm.
And on our way back, like out of town down there in Oklahoma, we saw a sign off to off the road, and we took the beaten path, and it was honestly one of our last sales. And I found they had actually three, but I only got one. They had the White Mountain ice cream freezers. Are you familiar
Right.
with those?
Yep.
Yeah.
It looks like a big wooden bucket.
Yes. And it was electric, 6 quart. It was the anniversary edition. And she had three of them. One of them was working perfect. And the other two, I think there was maybe she had said something was like, they needed this or for parts, whatever. And I didn't want to mess with that, but I got it for $37, which I thought was a screaming deal. And I brought it home and I listed it right away. I listed it pretty high, but I was, going to take a reasonable offer because I just wanted to get it out of here because I didn't want to store it. But anyways, I sold that thing within a week for $300. And they paid shipping. I was so excited. That paid, for our whole trip. So that
Right.
was great.
That's
And of
wonderful.
course, then I was like, oh, why didn't I get the other two? I could have sold the parts or whatever, but we were kind of maxed out in our car with space.
Right. And
And I
those
was like,
are, they're not small.
yeah.
Well, six
It took
quart.
up
Yeah,
space.
that's pretty big.
Yeah. But that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that's just a fun summertime
Yeah.
thing, a family event to
Hmm.
make the ice cream. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I've seen quite a few of those older ones. I don't know what the difference is other than the obvious. They're more well made and
Yeah.
sturdy and durable, and maybe the newer ones, crap out too
Yeah.
fast, the motor
Right.
burns up, or they're not as big. I'm not sure what the attraction is, but
Yeah.
people do like those older ones.
They really do. I had been at a sale not long before I found the one I got, and a friend of mine was there. We were both standing in line ahead of the sale, and we both were kind of eyeing each other up like, because we had seen it in the listing, and I kind of figured when I saw him, I was like, oh, I bet that's why he's here. And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna try to go for it. I'll look what they're asking for it. And he ended up buying it. He paid $200 for it because he was sure he could still, make good money on it. So they are really valuable. I don't, like you said, I don't quite understand all of why, but because you can still buy other ice cream makers, but maybe
Mhm.
it's like you said, the nostalgia. I don't know, but
Yeah, it might be. Oh, we had this exact one when I was
yeah,
growing up, and they just
yeah,
it's a nostalgia thing.
yeah. And they are cool, but I was happy to get rid of it because I didn't want to
That
mess
is a
around with it.
lot. That is a lot for an ice cream maker.
I
So
know.
I
Plus
wonder
they
what the
paid the
reason
shipping.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that I found, I was trying to look here. I don't think I wrote down when this was, but I think, yeah, it was in the last year. I was at the local Goodwill, and as we all know, Goodwills are they have not decreased in their pricing, which is frustrating, but I've just learned to shop different there. But I had gone back by the housewares and the purses and bags and stuff, and I saw this brown leather case, a small case, and I come from a family of hunting and stuff, so I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a gun case. Picked it up, and sure enough, it was a vintage Browning rifle shotgun hard case, and it had the key, and it was $6.99. I was like, well, for $6.99, I'm gonna scoop this up, and I brought it home, and oh, this is cool, and so I did some quick researching, and I thought, well, what I'm seeing, I feel like I should be able to list it for, I felt like I listed it for 160. I felt like that was pretty decent. Maybe I could have got more, but I was like, I don't really want to, again, store this forever. I listed it, and within like 10 minutes, I sold it. So then I'm going, oh, shoot, I should have priced it higher, but I was like, nope, it's out of here. They paid the shipping. They were thrilled. I was happy. I turned $6 or $7 into 160. Can't argue with
Yeah,
them.
you can't.
No.
And just don't beat yourself up that
Yeah.
you should price it higher, because I'm sure you know that buyers have alerts.
Yes.
As soon as it's listed, they get,
Yeah.
I have several set up for
Hmm.
things I'm always looking
Yeah.
for my personal
Yeah.
self.
Right.
And oh, that got listed.
Yep.
And so it doesn't mean you price it too low. People
Yeah.
just assume that, and that's
Yeah.
not the case
Maybe not.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. But I was pretty happy with that. And of course, it's always exciting when you can tell your family that it sold, that fast. They're always really into that with me. So that was fun.
How many items do you have in your inventory?
Yeah. Right now I have about 470.
Okay.
So I feel like that's a good place for me. Of course, I would like to see more sell faster, but yeah, I feel happy around 450, give or
That's
take.
where I stay. And as
Yeah,
one person, I feel
yeah,
like um that's good. That's what I
mhm,
can maintain. And
yeah,
you've got this family and all these kids and
yeah,
responsibilities, and I've got my other things I do, and podcasts and videos and all the stuff. I
yeah,
mean, I don't think I could just be 100% eBay. I think I'd get too bored.
yeah,
I
yeah,
like having different creative projects to do. But
yes,
yeah, I would love to have more inventory, because that
yeah,
means you're going to sell more.
hmm,
There's just only so many hours in the day that you can focus on it.
yeah,
I just don't
exactly.
know how these people, if they really do work on it 12 hours a day. I just
Yeah.
I just think that's a recipe for burnout.
Yeah, that is a commitment.
So
I have too many interests, and I have too many things I want to do in life. I won't live long enough to do all of them, let alone, spend 12 hours a day on one particular thing. Good on
but when
people
you,
that can,
yeah,
but
you can find items for $7 and flip them for over 100. You don't need to have as much.
that's
You
true.
can
Yeah,
make the money you want to make. And we always want to make more than we're making.
exactly.
There's no
Exactly.
threshold of like, oh, I'm totally satisfied with
Yeah.
this amount of income. No, because
No,
it's unlimited.
exactly.
You could work on your eBay 24 hours a day until you die,
Right.
and still have not get it all done,
Right.
because it's just
Exactly.
endless.
Yep, exactly. Which is such a great thing about it too. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the other beautiful thing about eBay is like, whatever season of life I'm in, it can adapt. I can do more or I can do less. And that's just been a real perk of eBay is like whatever I'm in the midst of, if I can't fit it in, okay, it'll be there. I can pick it back up. This last
Yeah.
year, I had, other life experiences and hard things going on, and I didn't do as much as I would have wanted to. And it's easy for me to look at that and think, oh, compared to, my eBay business 2 or 3 years ago, oh, if only I was back to that now. But I was in a different season, a different
Right.
set of events. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
okay.
and I'm so glad you recognize that, because so many sellers get to the end of the day and they're like, oh, I only listed 8 things today.
Mhm. Yeah,
I only did this, but those days add up.
they do.
So even if you just list one thing, that's
Yeah,
30 things a month. If you're just doing one a day, which
yeah,
is more than the person who's not doing anything.
yeah,
So
exactly.
don't beat yourself up. This for the listeners.
Yes.
Look back at your day and say, oh, I got this done and that done. And well, it wasn't optimal because, the washing machine broke and the repair guy
Mhm.
had to come and my day was interrupted. And that's life. Stuff's
Yes.
going to happen. And you're never going to have the perfect day where you're never interrupted or you get as much done. My to-do list is always way longer than I could possibly do.
Yep.
So
Oh,
I just roll it over to the next day
yeah,
and keep going.
exactly. It'll be there. That's the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
I thought I would talk a little bit about one of my favorite places to source, as I've probably thrown in here a couple of times, is estate sales. Um, I love estate sales. So, like I said in the beginning, I worked for an estate sale company locally, and I really loved it. However, it is very hard work. I'm not opposed to hard work. In fact, I have a very strong work ethic, but it was back-breaking work, and I just got to the point where I was like, okay, I need something different, and it was time to move on. But I love going to estate sales. Like, I love going and seeing someone's, life in their home set up for sale by a company, and seeing their house. Like last week, I went to Wichita for some estate sales. One in particular I wanted to go to because I knew the lady that does these sales. She gets the cream of the crop from my perspective. She lands the good sales, and she has good pricing. Like I feel like I go to her sales and I feel like she's fair with her pricing, but she just always gets like these amazing homes. And this home was just like, I mean, it was just exquisite. It just everything in it just evoked like money. Like it was just incredible. And but along with that, like so a lot of things were priced out of my range or didn't really interest me, but it was interesting to see. But along with that, like, they can't know pricing on everything, and they can't like get everything priced. Like I was down in the basement at this sale, and I found a couple boxes of like vintage Christmas ornaments. And she had like, can you see that?
Yeah.
Little like Father Christmas, Santa Claus. They're vintage ornaments. Um, and they weren't priced. And I took it up to her and I was like, there's a box of these down there. How much do you want? And she said, well, how about $2 a piece? And then everything was 20% off that day. I was like, oh, sure, that sounds fine. So I brought them all up there. And then when I was telling them all my stuff, they wanted me to just like go over the stuff that I had. And I showed her, I was like, well, I have like, I think I had 9 of these. And then there was 3 that weren't in boxes and didn't have the little strings on them. She's like, oh, $20 for the whole box. And I was like, sure, sounded great. So then I brought them home, and I debated, like, do I want to list all of these in a lot? I went with the route of listing them individually. I listed them all for like 15 a piece. So, I haven't sold them yet, but I feel optimistic about it. And if they sit there, too long, maybe I'll change my strategy and lot them up or something like that. But I just think it's fascinating. And, they can't see and know everything that they sell. And another thing that I got there that I'm kind of excited about is this pair of Porsche designed by Carrera. Um, they're sunglasses.
Uh-huh.
They are Aviator sunglasses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're pretty fancy. And there's two lens sets with it. I don't quite understand all of this about these, but I found them back in the one of the dressing areas, they had like a big walk-in room closet with just racks of clothes and, shoes and purses and stuff, just all manner of exquisite stuff. And I found these, they were just thrown in with like a basket with other random like little bags and other glasses and stuff. And I didn't know anything about them. And I was like, well, Porsche, that's, pretty expensive car. So I didn't have good cell phone service in there. And I was like, well, for $12, I can learn, So I brought them home and showed my family. And quick comps and what I was seeing on eBay, they could be worth like $200. So,
Right.
I can spend $12 to learn about a pair of sunglasses. So that was kind of,
Yeah, you'll get that back at
Yeah.
least. So
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
that too. Just get it in your hands and work with it and do the research and see how much interest you get,
Yeah.
views and offers, and just see where it goes so
Yeah.
you'll know in the future.
Right.
And another thing about estate sales and getting bargains is they need to move that stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
They need to get it sold. So
Mm-hmm.
you can, some things are marked up,
Yeah.
no doubt. But
Right.
other things, it's like they can't mark everything up or they're
Right.
not going to sell enough stuff to make it worth their time because they're getting paid.
Right.
And what are they going to do with all the leftovers?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I mean, I
and you
know.
have a negotiating power too,
Yes.
at least on the second day,
Yeah.
where, okay, everything in this box, how much do you want for it?
Yes, absolutely. And some of the estate sale companies locally here in our town, I rub shoulders with these people regularly, and it's important to me to maintain respect for their pricing. I want to try to, be willing to give what they want within reason. I mean, we all want a good bargain. But when I look at the picture, like objectively, like these estate sale companies, they have to pay themselves, they have to pay their employees, and the people that they're doing these sales for, whether it's an estate or a living estate, they're probably paying for someone's retirement or their children's inheritance. So I feel like it's a fine line to walk. Like I said, we all want a good deal, but also like these people are just trying to, do the best they can. Now there's cases where it might not be just that. There could be other, ulterior motives in mind, but I want to try to be respectful of the whole process because it is someone's life when you go into an estate, like their home and their belongings and the things they curated in their lifestyle. So yeah, I just love estate sales though. I just enjoy them so much.
And you just never know what you're going to see because,
Yes.
this guy was into beer hats.
Yes.
Or I just bought a bunch of coffee burlap sacks.
Oh yeah.
And the man was in the coffee business for his
Mhm.
whole life. And so he traveled everywhere and he had all these different
Mhm.
bags that he had saved. Some of them still had coffee beans in them.
Yeah. Oh
Just,
wow.
and it's like, oh, this is very interesting. And that's one of those things, it's going to take a while for them to sell because they're
Yeah.
not flying out the door like other things would. But
Yeah.
so what,
Yeah.
they're not going to expire. It's
Yeah.
a utilitarian item that can be used for a lot of different things, crafts and home decor and
Right.
sack race at your family reunion, whatever.
Sure. Yep.
Like, yeah, I just had a gut feeling. Yeah, I get those. And
Yeah.
we'll just see how they sell. But it's one of those things that I didn't pay very much for, and they'll sell for around $20. And
Yeah.
like your books, it'll just take a while to
Yep.
go out the door. But
Yep.
yeah, you just never know what you're going to see that person was into,
Oh yeah.
collected. And I also have another thing I bought. It's an artist sketchbook.
Oh yeah.
I got this one online, but apparently the artist was a cartoonist somewhere in New York.
Okay.
And I looked him up and he died 10 years ago.
Oh
So
wow.
his children must just now be dealing with his estate.
Oh.
But it's all these where he's practicing drawing and
Mhm.
sketches of children and animals.
Oh wow.
Very, very talented artist.
Mhm.
And I just feel like, yeah, that could be something like would go in a coffee house just for people to
Mhm.
chat, or maybe a
Mhm.
artist museum, or
Mhm.
just a budding artist that
Yeah.
is interested in that. So I'm looking for more like things like that that
Yeah.
are usual and very personal,
Yeah.
because I'll put his name in the title, and
Yeah.
who knows, maybe some relative will find it and want to buy it and have it. That happens
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
yeah. Okay. Well, we have about used up our time here. Do
Okay.
you have any parting words for the listeners?
Well, I know you had asked me if I had any advice for other resellers, and I thought, well, maybe I do. And I think it goes back to what I said previously. Like, grow and move forward, but be okay with where you're at, because who you are today isn't who you were yesterday or last year, and your life circumstances aren't the same either. And so, you know, but don't compare yourself, but keep moving forward, because yeah, every day is a real gift, and we're given opportunities to, yeah, work with. So I guess that would be my advice, to just grow and
That's great
move
advice.
forward.
And you are not where you were
Yeah.
6 years ago when you started this.
Yep.
So yeah, you just keep growing with it. And this is a business where you will never stop growing.
Right.
You will never learn it all, because new things pop up all the time, or we figure out what people want. And
Yep.
oh, really? They want that because it was on this TV show that just
Yep.
came out last year. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
excellent. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for fitting me into your busy day. And you said you're going to go to some estate sales this
Yeah,
afternoon.
I'm meeting a friend to walk at lunch, and then I'm going to hit a couple of sales. So yeah,
Excellent. Good for you. Well, happy hunting. I hope you find lots of great things, and I'm sure
thank
you will.
you. Yes,
Okay.
thanks so much, Suzanne. This has been great.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye.
Parting words today go back to Rachel's comment referring to rising prices at thrift stores. She said, "You just have to learn to shop differently." And she is absolutely right. We have to keep evolving and figuring out new ways to do this business. Where some people see roadblocks, other people see opportunities. So think about it that way. You can also have the mindset of, oh, this is impossible, I can't do this. Or, how can I do this? So become one of those how people. And I've seen so many things change since I started selling in 2003, but I've adapted, and so can you. Just keep rolling with it. Next week, my guest is Stephanie in Texas. Part of her semi retirement includes eBay, and she is a smart cookie. You will love her perspective, so don't miss that episode. And thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. Keep working hard, but take time to nurture yourself too. Talk to you next week. Bye for now.